Jim Collins, welcome once again to Excelsior Capital's The Rising Series podcast. My guest today is Mike Calise, CEO of Tellus Power, which is doing some very, very interesting things in terms of actual power, whether that be vehicles or many, many, many other verticals. So I will stop rambling now and I'll throw it over to Mike and have him introduce himself and his company. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Look forward to this exciting conversation. So I'll tell you a little bit about Tellus Power. We're a company that's core competencies and skill sets is in bi-directional electron flow. In the past, we've used that and grown the business based on electric vehicle charging, fleet charging, vehicle to grid management. But as we move forward, we're going to effectively direct those skills into managing a much more significant problem and a much greater opportunity in powering physical AI at the edge versus, say, cloud AI in the cloud for generative and cognitive AI.
Okay, so maybe, Mike, you could give us a couple examples of physical AI and how quickly you think those will sort of, hit the real world.
Great. So we all know, the Anthropics and the open AIs. We all know what's happening in the cognitive AI or generative AI, whatever your favorite definition is. These are massive superscalers that need to be built. These are now being measured in gigawatts, no longer compute limited, it's all power limited. And that's really the fundamental premise of what we're solving. These large data centers are moving closer to energy generation. They're moving to nuclear power plants. They're moving upstream to solar and wind farms. They're moving to hydroelectric. So that's a common thread. Elon's moving them in space. Some others are moving them below the surface of the ocean. So you have a tremendous appetite for power in this cognitive or generative AI and these massive superscalers. However, what does that leave for the edge? What is the edge? That's where people live and thrive and work. So, this simple grid is a power source over a T line into a substation, over the transformers down into the building or the vehicle. That's a passive load. But in the very near future, and what's happening now is there's physical AI at the edge. What's physical AI? Well, autonomous vehicles is a great example. Robots on wheels, automated warehousing and distribution, these automated conveyors and forklifts. There's a massive growth of batteries. How about the near future of humanoid robotics in the factory? We're talking millions of these units. In the home, they'll be novel and interesting, but in the factory, they're going to be massively used for productivity gains and higher output. So we see this need, this load now, which was a passive load in the past, becoming a very active load. And that means when you can control those electrons in multi-directions as an energy router within a specific area, you have great things to happen. And that's what's the core competency of what Tellus Power does.
Okay. And then, Mike, maybe you can give us an example of some kind of physical device that would be a sort of proto early days energy router, which obviously you're going to blow away, I'm sure, in a couple of years. But
yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example. A school bus is this mundane appliance. It's a bus that takes kids to school, picks them up in the morning, runs about a 2-hour shift, sits around for a few hours, goes and drops the kids back off. So that school bus sits dormant most of the time. Traditional school bus runs on diesel fuel. Not so healthy for the kids, and certainly emits greenhouse gas emissions and particulate matter. Not the best. But worse than that is the sort of fleet control. You have drivers show up late, kids miss school. One of the great new finds, check it out, Zoom, Z-U-M. He's got a fantastic mission of really reducing 12% attrition rate at grade school levels because the school buses aren't running on time. It's a poorly managed fleet. It's a very expensive fleet to manage. So let's look at what's that?
I remember it well. I mean, and growing up in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, let me tell you, it was an hour and a half every morning. So anyway.
These are poorly managed fleets by municipal districts. Let's say they're very expensive. So she flips the script. And this is where we come in. So now you take 70 or so school buses. Each one of those has a battery over 150 kilowatt hours in that school bus.
Yep.
The duty cycle of that school bus allows for about 70% of that battery still to be available to you, even after the duty cycles of picking the kids off and dropping them back off. So now what's happening is through our technology, through the centralized control at the charger, that distributed energy is aggregated across the entire fleet. You're getting a massive amount of aggregated energy of those 73 buses that now can be used to be stored in stationary storage, which can be used to reduce the utility bills in the building. It can be used vehicle back to the building, and it can be used back to the grid and sold back to the grid. So what is a very passive, very expensive fleet is now becoming an energy generator back to the fleet. So we're seeing this happen. We're very excited about that. And now there's an extension to San Francisco Unified School District. The original one was in Oakland, where they're planning on 200 plus buses. At 200 plus buses, the number of gigawatt hours annually is 10 gigawatt hours annually back to the grid. That's big business and big money. So that's our ability to take sort of control over this environment. And as you start to see the growth in autonomous vehicle, smart fleet, last mile delivery, eVTOL, you get this amazing opportunity for aggregating that battery and using as a resilient resource on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and maybe we're sort of going off script here, but you talked about what you're doing in Oakland with Zoom, and I believe Highland is the other partner.
Correct.
Maybe you can just give us sort of, as they say in the tech world, learnings. Like, what are you finding out that you didn't know before you started?
Yeah, the learnings that's a great question. On paper, right? It's easy to architect this. You've got a grid, you know what that energy costs. You got a building, you know what that building's energy bills are. You have a fleet bus, you know how long and how expensive it is. You know what your cost of fuel is, right? So on paper, we put these really nice PowerPoints together, and there's a building, and there's a grid, and there's a power source, and there's some dollars. Okay, and it's really easy. The technology's there. We have these bi-directional chargers. We spend 10 years developing this deep tech, and it works. The learnings comes from you've got a lot of stakeholders, and you've got to really pull the stakeholders together. So you have to have the utility contribute to buy back that energy. You have to have a desire from the utility to reduce the demand when the peak demand is required elsewhere. So it's really important stakeholder. You have to have the bus company, the company that makes these EVs, BYD in this case, and others as we move forward. Bluebird as well, and there's others. Now there's been some successes and failures, but the ones that are surviving are, the timing is really right. You have to have the bus company. You have to have the software, really important, that manages these electron flows so that when to use those electrons and where to use those electrons. And certainly you have to have the deep technology. You have to have the EPC, the permitting, the installation, and so forth. So that's pretty big shareholdership. And what we've learned is it takes more time than you originally think. But once you prove it a few times and the monetary benefit is there, you're going to start to see this domino effect, and it will go long past school bus. We're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I saw something, I believe it was on the Zoom website where they're working with Santa Monica, I think the big blue buses, and
they're going to keep growing. They just, speaking of the investment side, they just raised $100 million in private equity on a $1.7 billion valuation. She was early on with, I'm pretty sure it was Sequoia Capital and other VCs back in the days where they were under $500 million. They then did I think $150 million raise. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they raised a total of about $500 million, and now they just raised the top off of 100. Still privately held, but that's at 1.7 billion. So she's absolutely building, a great trajectory for a company, her specifically. But think about just the model. It doesn't have to be, could be transit bus. It will be autonomous vehicle. It'll be dormant vehicle. It'll be last mile delivery. It'll be, the expansion of how many of these large duty cycle. It'll be drayage at the ports. Seeing a fairly wide, truck vehicle class being able to adopt this type of architecture. And as the batteries are getting cheaper and cheaper, this economics begins to pencil in, and we're able to control and monetize those electrons in multi directions.
Yeah, and I think that some of these subsectors that you mentioned, because I was pitched on a EV refuse business in the UK about 10 years ago. Phenomenal idea. Never really went anywhere. So the fact that you're partnered with a company that just raised 100 million at a $1.7 billion valuation from TPG is, you're valued by who you hang out with, I guess.
Yeah, and we're the deep tech that makes that all happen. Again, you need all the stakeholders, and we're starting to see that expand. In the past, you had to rely on government grants because the cost of the batteries was so high that you couldn't ever get that to pencil on a business model where anyone would jump in. You can have all the funding in the world, but if you can't make a pencil, you don't have the economic interests of getting these done.
Yeah.
As the cost of batteries have come down, I've been around in the business for quite some time, since 2010. The cost of batteries in general was $1,200 a kilowatt hour back then. If you go back to a Nissan Leaf, that's like a $30,000 battery in a $30,000 car.
Right.
So you need full subsidies, and it still didn't pencil. We've been on a cost learning curve, what's called a downward trajectory over 15 years, where now we are at a magic number where the average cost, depending on who you talk to, and which is about 100 a kilowatt hour. That's a 10x reduction. That's a step change. At a 10x reduction at 100 a kilowatt hour, the economics are penciling in where your break even on the cost of capital is within a few years. And then you're printing money on this relative to energy management and energy transfer. So it's a very breakthrough technology. In fact, I think I read just the other day, within the last 2 days, that said the number one impediment to EV adoption historically has been the high price, the premium you pay for the EV. I've always known that, been in the industry. The number two is always lack of available charging infrastructure, right? Well, now for the first time, the costs are come down to where it's parity with a gas-powered vehicle, even in multiple classes, not just the ultra luxury sports sedan, but in multiple classes. So now you're seeing the lack of available charging infrastructure is the biggest impediment. So we also play very well there. So you have that sort of a perfect storm now, where you have this massive growth of AI load, this deep technology of controlling bidirectional electron flow, and the growth in all forms of EV, including all size fleets. So it's pretty exciting times in the next 5 years.
I think it's amazing. And, in terms of the way that you come to market, Mike, I think basically the way that you are describing it is sort of 5 product offers broadly. And obviously you know much more than I ever would, but maybe if you could just quickly go through DC charging, AC charging, the best business battery integrated chargers, and then finally what I think is the most exciting, the sort of the V2X, which is vehicle to environment, or V2G, which is vehicle specifically to the grid in a bi-directional way. But sorry, that's a long list.
No, I get it. So look, it's pretty simple. The historic way of the early ways, I call it charging 1.0, it's my expression, is you've got these AC chargers. They're relatively inexpensive to make. It's effectively a cable, a contactor, a ground fault protector, and it's limited in by 220, and some are even operating at 110. So that's the first proliferation. Proliferate it wide. You have a mayor and a municipality saying, hey, we're going green. Let's put a few in our civic center, and you could charge for free. And nothing wrong with that. That starts the industry. But 5, 7, 10 years later, you're saying, hey, the pitch was, look, you can charge at home. You could plug in and get a full tank every morning. You don't even have to go to the gas station. That still holds true, except that more than 50% of the population don't own a single family home and don't have access to home charging. So now you have to say, well, I can get that charge at work. So let's put these AC chargers at work and I could do the reverse commute. Fantastic amenity by your employer. However, even that has limitations because most people, now especially a lot of people don't drive to work or commute. So now charging 2.0 is let's put these DC chargers everywhere, particularly between city to cities, so that you have corridor charging, so that you can go cross country without getting stranded. Now, look, who's driving cross country every day? All right, look, maybe once or twice, but let's be realistic. You have to say, if we take a trip to grandma's house from San Francisco or LA to LA, or you go for a business trip from New York to DC, you certainly don't want to get stranded. No. So it was a proliferation. Tesla did a fantastic job. Yep. And now there's a continued growth of these first generation DC chargers that made it safe to go long distances. Okay, yep. Great. That's a 2.0 kind of mentality. Now 3.0 is where you have very high powered output charging to the tune of 400 kilowatt, 360 to 400 kilowatt out. You could share that cord and you can divide by 2, which is basically the max these batteries are going to take. So high performance charging, that's a 10-minute charge to add 200 miles on your tank.
Wow.
Or 12-minute charge to add 220. And look, it varies by 20 miles here or there, but I know that if I'm stopping halfway between LA to San Francisco and I charge up, I don't even have to charge to full. I got another 250 miles. I had a In-N-Out burger. That's a little plug. I used the bathroom. I sent a text. I'm on my way. So that's a very convenient way to charge. You can get in and out. A gas station experience is a 6-minute experience. Double that, a 12-minute experience, and you get another 200 miles added. A phenomenal high-performance charge, but it gets better than that. Okay. And how it gets better than that is now these chargers are connected to battery banks.
Right.
So now, depending on the 480 or 208 you have coming in, you could sustain multiple fast charges across the fleet. And when you put these in shopping centers, which is a really important part of this whole equation, it's not just about corridor city to city. Dude, where do you spend your time? You go grocery shopping, you might do dry cleaning, you might get a lunch, a slice of pizza or other. You want to be able, and you live right around the block and you don't have access to charging because you live in an apartment dwelling or other. You're definitely going to rely on shopping center as your predominant charging. Now, if you bank those up with batteries, you have the opportunity to have effectively resilient charging in the event of power down, regular charging, cost-effective charging, and within 20 to 40 minutes, you basically get a full charge every time. So this is a tremendous new growth. You start stacking V to G, which is really the core technology of bidirectional electron flow, and you're taking these fleets, which are predominantly used to carry people, right? It's pretty fundamental. Use energy, carry people from point A to point B. Same with petroleum. Use energy, carry people from point A to point B, whether it's a commercial fleet or your family to a soccer game. Now it's use energy, carry from point A to point B. Now it's store energy on that vehicle, deliver a monetary benefit back to the grid in the form of energy to charge, supply, and power the growth of physical AI where you live. So it's a very exponentially exciting opportunity for us and our competitors.
Okay, and in terms of, I guess, 2 different questions. In what does the actual vehicle need to be compatible with bidirectional charging? And then on the other end, what would the sort of, whatever it is, supermarket owner or office building, or what sort of investment would they have to put in also to go bidirectional? Because we're taking that electron.
So let's break down the bidirectional, what the vehicle needs. So the first thing is all batteries can act bidirectional. They don't know, they don't care. Energy in, energy out. Now, that doesn't come without a cost. Okay, so you need a car company, a vehicle company that is willing to know that discharge as well as a charge is going to cycle the battery more than it would if it's just storing energy at 70%. Okay. So the technology and the batteries, it's there already.
Okay.
Batteries in general, bidirectionality, no issue. Warranty issues relative to the supplier of those vehicles. Will they manage the advantage of that vehicle and cover the warranty? So you pretty much have to deal with that. I'll give you an example. Rivian's a great example. Ioniq is a great example. They're V2G capable. Ford at one time, the Lightning, it still is, V2G capable. So, and GM, if you look at some new news from GM, they're getting smart. Well, they've always been smart, but what are we going to do in the next 10 years? Vehicle sales is going down. Vehicle ownership going down for petroleum and for EV. Now, EV is growth because we're starting from slow. So EV is definitely a continued growth trajectory, compounded annually around 30% globally, call it 20% in the US still. Okay. But when you look at overall, what's GM going to do? But they're smart. They're saying, look, for every one of the people who drive our vehicles, that's an energy source for their home. Tesla's been doing this with Powerwall already. They make the batteries, they're the same kind of batteries. So now what you're seeing is this aggregated virtual power plant. And what is that? Neighborhoods are pretty well defined. If you've got everyone in the neighborhood driving a certain vehicle who opt into this, they could say, sure, you could take some of my energy off the battery.
Right.
I'm only going to commute 30 miles a day on the average. You can take 20% of my topped off battery. It's only a little bit. They're not draining these batteries. And I'll opt in. I will save on energy costs. Then when that architecture works, you can get 1,000 people opt in. You're effectively creating a virtual power plant. And what is that power plant going to be used for? The significant exponential growth of physical AI at the edge.
Okay.
Those autonomous vehicles, those automated warehouse and production, the future of humanoid robotics.
Oh yeah.
That's where it's all happening in the inner city. It's where high population areas. So that is an absolute way to skin the cat without having to build nuclear power plants where people live, because nobody's going to want to do that except maybe the Simpsons. I guess they live near a nuclear power plant. And other than that, this is a great way to be able to solve the problems at the edge.
Okay, yeah, and the elephant in the room, and Mike knows this because we were talking offline and we met at a conference, but I followed autos for 11 years as a sell-side analyst, so virtually every conversation I have includes the word Elon in it at least 35 times. So if we have a Model Y, we have a Lexus, but if we had a Model Y, how much of what you're talking about is actually currently usable with it, and how much is technologically possible, and maybe Tesla's like sort of gating that a little bit?
Yeah. So Tesla, look, I know Elon, met him back in the day. I was in the Schneider Electric days.
Okay.
Obviously extremely impressed with his companies. I happen to be, full disclosure, shareholders in both Tesla for a long time and now in SpaceX. I'm a strong believer in his ability to innovate, his ability to produce things that no one's ever been able to produce, his concepts of fundamental principles, and the way he manages companies. So I think this fantastic opportunity. However, in the early days, there was one time Elon was quoted to saying, we'll leave that battery on the car and let it do its load accordingly. We'll create power walls within the garage and then let that be the fundamental way in which you can stay as a resilient house and reduce your energy bills. Maybe you certainly have solar on the roof through his solar product within the Tesla ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that makes a ton of sense. Now, though, he's evolved that to, vehicle ownership's going down. I can tell you a personal example. My daughter prefers not to own a vehicle. She Ubers everywhere. She lives in a big city. She doesn't want to pay for parking. That's smart. So Elon recognizes, as the macros suggest that ownership goes down, there's a tremendous efficiency around driverless or autonomous vehicles to compete with the Ubers and Lyfts in the world. So Waymo's already led the way. Robotaxis coming on very fast.
Yep.
And then you've got Zoox and others. So now when you take a look at this Model Y, it's now become a true robo taxi in many ways, where you have full self-driving capability within that Model Y. So Elon's still suggesting, hey, let that go out and do some work outside the home while we have these battery packs, but is soon flipping on that to suggest, hey, if you got a Cybertruck in your garage, or if you've got a vehicle in your garage, we're the leaders. We're gonna make use of that energy and repurpose that energy depending on your duty cycle. So I think there'll be tremendous benefits to that moving forward. GM is on that, BMW is on that, Ford will be on that, Ioniq, Kia and Hyundai are on that, and it won't take long for the rest have to follow. BYD is way advanced in that, doing very fast charging and being able to do bidirectionality in China. So let's say that that's great business opportunities to control energy. Now Elon will take it a step later and say, here's a reduced platform called a RoboCab. I believe, I don't know, speculation. It's going to introduce that as a commuter car in addition to just Cybercab.
Okay.
Thank you. In addition to Cybercab, and that's suggesting now get some real work done outside, so you don't have to pay a gas bill, let alone electricity bill for your own car. Let it pay for itself. And you're going to see new innovative business models kind of thrive. We'll see where it goes, but certainly energy versus compute is a number one resource we're controlling here.
Yeah.
And in the past, it's been energy to commute, right? And so now, at the end of the day, people, what do we do other than procreate the species? We walk and we talk, we communicate and we travel. So that's where the money is. It's very fundamental. So we're going to communicate, we're going to learn, we're going to share information, and we're going to transport ourselves to the next destination to enjoy what that looks like. There's a lot of money to be made there, and there's a lot of efficiency to be made there through these innovative strategies that Tellus Power offers.
So maybe we could, I mean, I can go through this sort of the tech stuff all day, but for you as a CEO, maybe you could talk a little bit about Tellus Power today in terms of, your capitalization table, who your bosses are. And I mean, to me, this almost sounds like an IPO pitch without the annoying deck and those stupid slides. So maybe you could give us just sort of a broad overview of what you're thinking about it and what your board is thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. So we are revenue producing today. I can't give you the numbers because the attorneys clamp me on that. But bottom line is we're healthy revenues, less than 100 million, less 50-ish. I'll leave it at that. And growth revenues year to year to year. So that's great. A very clean cap table, owned by China shareholdership and then the employee base, including myself and the employees. Very clean cap table, no debt. We may take on some short-term debt if we want to help us do some things operationally. We have, so we're effectively a mid-stage growth deep tech company. So we've been very interesting in the public markets for two reasons. One is reasonably easy access to capital. So that's the pitch on that side. We look to be going public and expect to be. At the same time, we could be raising some private money here to get us to that next level. Pretty simple. If you look at growth companies, you got the mega caps out there, the SpaceX's, which is the ultimate mega, and then you've got Anthropic and OpenAI expected, and you've got Databricks and all the rest of the AI guys. In 2025, the market for IPOs was really tight. There wasn't much going on in the NASDAQ. There was regs meets NASDAQ. There was overcorrection, whatever you want to call it. Everyone's willing to admit it. There wasn't room other than the ultra unicorns to come out, and even they didn't come out in 2025 or early 26. I've always said, as soon as SpaceX goes public, it'll inform the world of the importance, and we're talking about it every day, about power being the limiting factor to this massive AI growth in both sides of the equation, physical and cognitive. So Elon's going to educate the world about how we need this to be done in space.
Yep.
Then next you're going to have Anthropic and OpenAI. As the mega caps, the unicorns come out, there's a bunch of mid to large caps that are waiting in line to get out. And once SpaceX come out, as soon as the lockups, you're going to flood the market with liquidity. People need to apply those funds. They've made money on that. They need to apply those funds to next new growth. You got Anthropic, you got OpenAI. Same thing's going to happen. You're going to start to see the smaller unicorns come at it. Oh, only 100 billion. You know, that's incredible, right? We're not quite there yet. We're a smaller company, growth trajectory. So our belief is probably sometime in 27, be very favorable. We could probably go out earlier, but let's say we'll build, we'll build the strength of the organization. We'll probably take on some short-term capital, allow me to expand, go-to-market strategy, give customers a little bit more favorable terms that they may need, get into new markets that we're expecting, and really build out more of the business model, recurring revenue streams. So that's what I'll be using that funding for.
Yeah, I think that's, we go back to the learnings, but some of the sort of means of going public that sort of came out of COVID, like SPACs and de-SPACs. And I mean, I think they proved to be very far from perfect. So,
look, I have my opinion on SPACs. I had a very successful public offering when I ran Blink as the CEO of Blink Charging back in 2018. We took it from Car Charging Group, which was a feisty little OTC.
I remember that.
Yeah. Worked together with the founder, and we respun it and rebranded it Blink. We raised, I think, 30 something million back then on a 350 plus million cap. And we saw that go to 2 billion, made a lot of people a lot of money. At the time, the timing was right. I took another company where I took $100 million revenue company. I was the president, not the CEO. We did a SPAC and a de-SPAC, and that worked really well. We actually took that to 2 billion. Then everyone caught the tail end of the de-SPAC debacle.
Oh God, yeah.
So, a lot of very high redemptions, less promises. Some survived.
Like how it makes sense, right? Yeah, I mean, how many of those?
Exactly, many didn't. Now, some people are saying SPACs are getting rejuvenated. Again, if it's the right target and the right sponsor, I think you could still do well for companies that don't really know how to go public or what it takes to go public. They may be in that early stage. But I am always a little cautious about redemptions because at the end of the day, the financial institutions do well, regardless. They get their coupon, they get their deal. And sometimes the targets don't do as well as they could have. That said, I'm objective. There's multiple ways to raise capital: IPO, SPAC, direct listing, reverse merge, private equity. They're still available. God bless capitalism.
Yeah, it's Elon knows that, but until somebody comes up with a better way, it seems to be working quite well.
So absolutely, and like I said, I bought in. I don't care what price I'm buying it. I'm still buying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly never boring. So thanks a lot for your time, Mike. I think we're already bumping up over a half an hour here, so I should let you go. I know you're very busy. But again, I think Tellus Power has a myriad of opportunities. And I look forward to talking to you in the future. And
I certainly appreciate it, Jim. It's great to get to know you and great to share some thoughts about the future and what we're able to do to solve these grand challenges together. So thanks for having me.